This is Warhammer Quest Cursed City, one of Games Workshop's biggest catastrophes, despite the fact that the game sold out in just a few hours. Today, we are digging into the modern-day historical event, controversy, and honestly quite interesting happenings surrounding the release of Games Workshop's Cursed City. In the ancient city of Ulfenkarn at the heart of Shyish, the cruel vampire lord Radukar the Wolf has transformed this once proud city into nothing more than a feasting table for him and his menagerie of malicious servants. But now, a group of heroes seek to lift the curse and free the city, seeking fame, treasure and glory. With each part of the journey, you will learn more of Cursed City's closely guarded secrets and encounter more of the murderous undead that haunt it. Warhammer Quest Cursed City is a cooperative board game that you can either play solo or together with up to 3 friends. And prior to its launch in the spring of 2021, Cursed City was both hyped by the public and Games Workshop, with several flashy marketing campaigns and teasers of the new astonishing miniatures. You'd get a total of 60 minis, 1 rulebook, 1 quest book, and all of this to the low price of £120. Games Workshop and their social media team had made several comments that the game would be part of their regular lineup and to be supported for the foreseeable future. The hype among fans were just as high as the expectations had been leading up to the Game of Thrones Season 8 release. Partially because the game was announced mid-pandemic and people had more times on their hands than ever before. Another part of it was due to the fact that there had not been new Warhammer vampire miniatures for a very long time. Having a Warhammer Quest game in a setting featuring vampires was something that got people really excited. The final piece of the pie, the new miniatures, both the heroes and all of the encounters are some of the best that Games Workshop have ever done. The level of design and art direction in this game is just out of this world. As a result of all of these things combined, when the day for the pre-order came up, the game sold out on Games Workshop's website in a matter of hours. And this is where big trouble in Little Nottingham began. I think it's safe to say that this is the success that Games Workshop could only have dreamed of. Maybe even too much of a success. As we have heard from former staff and reliable sources, that this success completely overwhelmed them. You see, Games Workshop had used their previous release, Blackstone Fortress, a 40k variant of Warhammer Quest, as a measure for how many copies they think they would need in the first 3 years of the game's release. That game had been a raging success and selling over 200,000 copies over the game's 3-year lifespan. So it was safe to assume that it would be enough with a similar amount of copies for the Age of Sigmar variant, especially considering that Warhammer 40k is a much bigger universe and a way more popular franchise. So I can't really blame Games Workshop for making that assumption. Many of you are probably thinking, well, that's an easy fix. Just print more copies, get them out to the stores, and you're fine. Firstly, we have to remember that the production line had been quite delayed during the pandemic, causing multiple delays in the release schedule for Games Workshop. And secondly, Games Workshop did not expect to have to print more of these copies for at least 2-3 more years, or ever. Meaning that they hadn't scheduled it in their factories or the overseas production companies that make some of the booklets and other stuff. They were simply not prepared for this to happen and had to make a quick decision.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Stay calm!
This is a hell of a pickle for Games Workshop to be in. Exactly what Games Workshop did to counter this, we'll see in a second. Because first, we're gonna paint up some of the minis from the game while I talk about this week's sponsor, Squarespace. Does any one of you make art or do something cool that you want to display online? Well, Squarespace is a one-stop shop for you. Whether you want to display your art on an epic gallery or sell a cool product, they have some of the coolest award-winning templates on the internet. And the best thing is, it is so freaking easy to use. You got so many cool designs to pick from, and it's pretty much just drag and drop to make it feel like your own unique website. And when I say an easy shop to handle, I truly mean that. I've tried publishing STL files to sell on their platform, and it was so freaking easy. And if you want to sell a physical product, like we've also done, it's just as simple. And my recommendation is to just try it out for free. You can follow the link down below in the video description, build your own website, and once you're ready to launch, you just use the code Squidmar to get 10% off your entire purchase of a website or a domain. Now, let's get back to talking about what Games Workshop is gonna do about the situation they've put themselves in. At this point, Games Workshop had two decisions. One, go fully transparent with the public and explain the situation. Make an announcement in the veins of, hey guys, we sold 10 times more copies during the pre-order than we expected. Maybe give a public date when new copies would be produced and when they would have it in stock again. Maybe even have people sign up for a made to order, or maybe even offer something even cooler to those who waited a little bit extra. If they would have done this, at the most, people would have been maybe a little bit disappointed and people would have complained that they should have seen this coming, even though maybe it was quite impossible. On the upside, doing something like this would have kept people excited about the game and expecting more new things to come. They could have told us about upcoming expansions, maybe tease some new figures that would come along with that, or they could just stop talking about the game, pretend like it never existed, and leave all of those who didn't pre-order in the first hour in the cold. One could argue that one of these alternatives is better than the other. You can guess which one Games Workshop picked.
Oh, no.
It ain't the first one. Instead, all of the fans were left disappointed, frustrated, and confused. Did I say frustrated? Yeah. Because all of a sudden there were new tunes from the Games Workshop social media and community team. In response to fans' question regarding the availability of Cursed City, the Warhammer community team's Twitter stated that the game was sold out and they are not expecting it to return online. What's even funnier is they started to delete some old comments and posts where the community team had stated that it would be a product in their lineup for the foreseeable future. Had made several comments that the game would be part of their regular lineup, trying to backtrack all of this information that was already available on the internet that people had print screened and read. Instead, they asked people to turn to their local game stores because maybe they would have some copies available. Meanwhile, in the Nottingham Games Workshop HQ, someone made the decision to cut the number of copies sent out to local gaming stores. They sold too many online. At this point, the disappointment had turned into a massive outrage. Some YouTubers that I know even decided not to make videos about the release and painting up the figures because they were afraid of getting too many negative comments. This was heavily fueled by the lack of transparency from Games Workshop, since the fans had no idea what was going to happen. And I definitely was part of this group, because this was one of those games that I had been most excited about for many years. I had big plans of buying a copy myself. One of my patrons had purchased 2 copies and was kind enough to sell me one of them. As for the box itself, I am nowhere near disappointed. Love the game, love the miniatures. But there's more to the story. It doesn't end here. The release of Cursed City was originally planned for fall 2020, in November sometime, and the first expansion was expected to arrive around spring 2021. And that expansion was supposed to come with the big new release of the Soulblight Gravelord Vampires for Age of Sigmar, because some of the figures from that would be playable in both games. But since the original release of Cursed City was moved back over 6 months to around that period where the expansion was supposed to be released, but the Age of Sigmar release wasn't delayed, they thought it would be too soon to release the expansions just a few weeks after Cursed City, which in all honesty makes a lot of sense, which now means that we have miniatures that was originally planned to be part of the Cursed City expansion already have been released and announced to the public, but not as part of the game. Keep this in mind when we move a few months into the future. Because eventually Games Workshop decided it was time to reprint Cursed City. Probably because of the outrage, but also maybe because they knew that there were a lot of money to get from those sales. Unfortunately, this was way too late. All in all, the hype was gone, people had a sour taste left in their mouth from the release. But we have to remember that Games Workshop had also planned for 2 expansions, which eventually came kind of out of nowhere because people did not expect them to support this game still. I remember so vividly in our Patreon Discord, everyone was surprised about the release because they didn't do a big thing about it and there were no new miniatures in the expansion, just a couple of extra campaigns and a booklet, no figures whatsoever. But to be able to play the game and all of the missions, you needed to buy some miniatures that were released a half year earlier, together with the Soulblight Gravelords. The cost of the expansion isn't too bad, and paying $50-60 for just a box with a rule set, The big problem arises when we start looking at the price for the figures needed to play all of the missions. Night Wars and Nemesis are the two boxes, and the combined amount is over $500 for both of them together with all of the figures. And the funny thing is, it's about the same amount of plastic as in the original Cursed City box that was sold for 120 pounds. There's a big gap there. Nonetheless, in retrospect, the original game, Cursed City, is still one of the best bang for buck games Games Workshop have ever sold. And the designs and the art direction of the game, it's 11 out of 10. All of this rage, all of this frustration among fans and the bad will from Games Workshop could have been avoided with just a tiny bit of transparency. Have they learned from it? I hope so, but we have seen similar things happen even now with the new Kill Team boxes. That's it for today. Thanks to all of the Patreon who pledges a few dollars every month to support this channel, and to this week's sponsor. You guys are awesome. With that said, have a great day. Bye bye.